Righty, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Mr. Glaive Keo has pushed out another Genshin Impact video. And I'm going to be real over here. I'm not exactly sure if we can even call him a Kurobot anymore with all the Genshin content that he's been pushing out. There's been some shilling. And of course, there's been some critiques as well. And this video over here seems like it's going to be a pretty pointed critique for Genshin Impact because it's about why your money is worth less now than it is compared to the past. And there's been a lot of factors involved with this situation, right? You've had the power creep, the HP inflation, the constellations being given out for free for the dog shit units, and then of course the constellations being super strong for the most recent ones. So without further ado, let's go ahead, let's sink our teeth into this one and see what the FOMO Kurobot has to say on the matter.
Genshin Impact has just passed its 5-year mark. 5 years of being a global phenomenon. A game that redefined expectations for what a free-to-play title could be.
I think one thing for certain is that Genshin Impact was, without a doubt, one of the best free-to-play games on the market. And I think that's a good part of why it has such a long and consistent player base. It was the fact that, well, a lot of the content, you could just use these broken-ass 4-star units. You had a lot of weapons that were, like, interchangeable and stuff like that. You had a bunch of units like Kazuha that, if you pulled them, right, they would be usable for multiple years. You had characters from 1.x being used in 4.x Spiral Abysses. That was the state of the game. Then the Fire Nation attacked.
The world that continues to be one of the most beautiful and expansive in gaming. And yet, if you spend any amount of time in the community, you will find a persistent, complicated conversation taking place. It is a debate that touches on everything from new characters to endgame content.
Skirk wasn't the Fire Nation, it was actually Mavawika, but they kind of both did the same thing.
But it almost always comes back to one central question. Is Genshin still free-to-play friendly? You have creators and commenters arguing that the game has become demanding, restrictive, and expensive, and just as many who will tell you it is more generous than ever.
That video by Jello Impact was very, very, very good and gets into like the actual meat of the issue. So if you haven't seen that one yet, I suggest it.
And that they have never had to spend a dime. This video is not about picking a side in that argument. The goal is to understand why the argument is happening in the first place. And today we're going to look underneath the surface at the game's design, its economy, and the deliberate strategic choices that have been made as it has grown older. This is not a review video or a rant video. It is an attempt to understand the systems that shape how it feels to play Genshin Impact in 2025. And to do that, we have to start with a simple fact. The game you experience as a brand new player is not the same game a veteran logs into every day. And this difference in experience is the source of so much of the debate. The reality is that players exist in two separate versions of Tevat, defined entirely by when they started playing. First,
it's no lie at all to say that the later you start Genshin Impact, the better the overall game is probably going to feel, right? You've got all of these like years of quality of life updates that you're getting in Mondstadt right now as a new player that you weren't getting before when you played it back in the day. And of course, right, you've also got all of the other, well, if you pull on a character as a new player, you're probably going to get one of the broken ones, right? Because all the new characters are fucking broken compared to the old ones. And so that's why you have like these silly ass, it's pretty much the same thing in all Hoyoverse games with power creep. That's why you have all these silly videos by like creators like Mr. Pokey where they're like, look at my free-to-play account, look guys, it's so like, look, you can do everything free to play. That's because all he did was just pull on the most broken fucking units, because every unit that comes out is broken. And so that's always been the complaint. You can just be a free-to-play player, pull all the new stuff, and then clear all the content. But if you're the older player who spent all their resources on the older units, go f yourself.
Let's look at the new player experience, right? Imagine starting Genshin today. In late 2025, you log into a massive, beautiful world with 5 years of content ready and waiting. And as you play through it, the game just throws currency at you. Every chest you open, every statue you level up, every story quest you endure, it all adds up to a massive cache of Primo Gems. And to put that into perspective, it is enough to guarantee around 6 different limited 5-star characters completely for free. And for
6 limited 5-star characters for free, with all the Primo Gems, assuming you do all the exploration in the game. Yeah, that's basically enough to build, well, almost, you should probably be able to build 2 full Spiral Abyss teams if you count in all the 4-star dupes that you're getting. Yeah, you should be able to guarantee 2 Spiral Abyss teams ready to go. They're all going to be filled with the broken fucking units. And I guess 2 Stygian Onslaught ones?
For that new player, the gacha system, the part of the game where you spend currency to get random characters feels like an afterthought. It feels less like a demanding core mechanic and more like a very generous reward for just playing. This is called the new player honeymoon. For months or even a year, Genshin feels like a fantastic single-player RPG that just so happens to be free. But that experience has an endpoint. And that brings us to the other Tevat, the one inhabited by the veteran player. For them, that vast world of rewards is gone.
They've already spent it all. And that's why the whole free-to-play account, the new free-to-play account argument is so bad and is so awful to use for veteran players when a game has abundant power creep. Because they've already spent all those pulls from the initial versions of the game. And they spent it on units that were a fucking waste of money.
The chests have been opened, and the quests have been completed. The well of permanent content has run completely dry. Their gameplay loop is no longer exploration and discovery, it is a checklist. Their income becomes a predictable metered system, from daily commissions, the latest temporary events, and the endgame resets. And at this stage, Genshin stops being a sprawling RPG and transforms into a long-term resource management game. What that means is that your main activity is no longer adventuring, but planning. You are carefully saving every primo gem, calculating your pity for the gacha, and mapping out which characters you might be able to afford 2, 3, maybe even 4 months from now. The result of these two realities is a fundamental disconnect in the community. You will often see a long-time free-to-play player in the comment section say something like, "I don't get the complaints. I'm a free-to-play and I have everyone I wanted." And in a way, they're not lying. But that statement is built on 5 years of accumulated history. 5 years of every daily commission, every patch reward, every single limited time event, an advantage a new player can never replicate. And for those who have played from the start, this shift from abundance to scarcity was slow. It is the classic boiling frog experience, right? And the idea is simple. If you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat...
This is actually misinfo. The frog does actually end up leaving, but I think people have just sort of like gone with it. Yeah, that's why it's a myth.
Notice the gradual change until it is too late. For veterans, the water has been getting warmer, one patch at a time, and now many are starting to realize just how hot it has gotten. That economic pressure raises a critical question. What is a...
How do you know? Because it literally said right here, myth, which means it's not real. That's why I said it's not real.
Now, many are starting to realize just how hot it has gotten. That economic pressure raises a critical question. What is a wish even worth anymore? On the surface, the economy for a long-term player looks stable. You can earn around 57 wishes per patch, which is, in my opinion, it's kind of low, but it is...
57 wishes a patch in Genshin Impact is incredibly dog shit. That's the thing, right? When we talk about the free-to-play players being able to get whatever they want, it's based off of the existing permanent content in the game. It's after you're done with the permanent content and then you're proceeding on to the daily income for patch that you're just like, what in God's name even is this? It can take you upwards of around 170 pulls to guarantee a character. Sorry, just the character. And so at 57 pulls a patch, it is literally 4 patches of skipping to guarantee one character. And that is half of the year, or close to it.
Is enough to get you a guaranteed 5-star character roughly every other update. The cost of a single character hasn't changed, so if the outcome is stable and the price is stable, what's the issue? The issue is that those wishes don't buy you as much as they used to. The purchasing power of your primo gems has gone down. What you can get for your currency that is completely viable has fundamentally changed. In the early days of the game, a strong team could be built around a single powerful 5-star, like a main DPS, a main damage dealer, and supported by 4-star characters that most people already have.
And you would get the 4-star characters pulling on the 5-star.
Say you pulled a Hu Tao, you're gonna put her with Xingqiu, and the other two could be a flex. And with Hu Tao there, your account was significantly stronger with just one successful pull. And well, that is not really how it works anymore. Back in the days, the hypercarry meta is basically the game itself. But now, modern teams are built around what the community calls hyper synergy meta. And that is just a fancy way of saying that the new characters are now designed like puzzle pieces.
And that's the part of the game that really gets confusing, right? Is it's really astounding to have this sort of like matching mechanism that was in HSR when the game gives out way less pulls than HSR. And the weapon banner is significantly worse than it is in HSR. That's kind of like the real issue over here. It's the fact that none of these teams feel like they have like a generalist character out of the bunch, and they're all like specifically tailored to work around each other. And it's like and the worst part is that when the limited character that is supposed to be a generalist ends up becoming a part of that synergy. Think, for example, about Nahida and Lauma. Nahida used to be one of the most generalist characters in the game, right? She would just be on any Dendro team and you'd be good. But now she's become like a Lauma support. Because, well, part of the hyper synergy that Glaive is talking about over here involves pairing up Nahida with the Lauma. And so she essentially becomes a part of the team. Much like how Farina, right, has become a part of the Skirk team. And so now it's like she's a hyper synergy match for the Skirk team. You never want to use Farina outside of the Skirk team nowadays because that's where her best performance is going to be. Much like how Jalonin used to be a generalist shredder for all the elements, but now she's permanently stuck on the Bavwika team. These generalist characters have essentially started getting pigeonholed into these lineups because these lineups deal 50% more damage, 100% more damage than every other team in the game. And so are you going to use your Nahidoi, your Farinoi, and then your, Jalonin? Are you going to use them on teams that deal 60k damage? Or are you going to use them on teams that deal 100k, 110k damage? It's kind of obvious which one you're going to slot them in if you have all the characters. So are these characters really even generalistic anymore?
On their own, they might seem fine, but their true advertised power is only unlocked when you slot them into a very specific team, with other specific characters who activate their abilities. It is a lock and key system. So you pull your new shiny character, and congratulations, you've essentially bought the engine, and now you need the wheels, the transmissions, and the steering wheel, all sold separately, of course.
This is like if every single Wuthering Waves character was like Zani. That's basically it. This would be like if every Wuwa character that got released in 2.0 was just like Zani. That is essentially the DPSs of this game in the present.
Take a character like Nuvalet, for example. At his release, he was already one of the strongest damage dealers in the game. But his absolute best team, the one that pushes for his damage to its theoretical limit, consists of 3 other 5-star characters. The Archon Furina for her massive damage buff, Kaedehara Kazuha for his grouping and resistance shred, and a premium healer like Baitu or Shilonen to manage the team's health. Suddenly, the cost of playing meta Nuvalet isn't just the 90 to 180 wishes it took to get him, it is potentially 300, 400, or even more wishes to assemble his entire support staff.
I don't even think this is Nuvalet's best team anymore, right? Isn't one of Nuvalet's best team like it's one featuring Escoffier and then you just play like a freeze one? I thought that one was competitive, if not better, right? Because Escoffier is going to be the premium healer, and then you sort of just slot in some Hydro Shred or something in there. Oh wait, you already got it. You can go Escoffier or you go Hyper Bloom Lunar with Lauma. Ah, it's Anefa and Lauma now. Oh, okay. All right, so basically, there are slight variations, but they're all including the new characters.
And this is the new reality of the team package. A single 5-star pull is no longer the finish line. It is the first down payment.
And the thing is, those old Nuvalet teams, right, from back in the day, Hyperbloom Nuvalet, without Lauma, that doesn't do enough damage to clear. Yeah, brother, that shit ain't doing enough damage to clear anymore. Those are the 50, 60k DPS teams, brother. We need the 90, 100k ones.
On a resource-intensive project that can span multiple patches. The goalpost has moved. It is no longer about saving up to get a character. It is about saving up to get a fully operational premium team. This new reality has forced a change in player behavior. To plan for the entire team, you need information far in advance, which is why so many dedicated players now feel like they have to keep up with leaks. The game
Well, yeah, if they do shit. So Skirk and Escoffier, right, are 2 teammates that were made in heaven, designed to be with each other. I do believe it was Escoffier's banner, then the rerun for the patch in the next phase, and then Skirk right after. You got roughly around 100 something pulls. To guarantee both characters, you would need around 360. So by that math, you would have had to have saved up about 5 to 6 patches in advance, with each patch being 42 days. I hope you were saving up about 8 to 9 months in advance for the Escoffier Skirk package, because that's how long you would have needed to have saved around 8 to 9 months in advance to pick up the Escoffier Skirk package using just the pulls that are in the patch free to play. I feel like that's a lot. I personally feel like that's a lot of fucking pulls and a lot of fucking time. You would have needed to have saved while Fontaine was still live. You would have had to have started saving in version 4 point something before Natland released. You would have had to skip every single Natland banner, Mavuika Sitlali, all of that to be able to afford Escoffier and Skirk free to play. Oh God.
Gameplay loop now includes scrolling social media to figure out which characters are coming in the next 3 months.
Can you blame them when there's this little polls in the game?
And which of them need each other to function. The outcome is a very specific kind of FOMO, a fear of missing out. It evolved into a strategic anxiety. If I skip this support character now, will the new damage dealer I want in a few months be significantly weaker without them? And
that was literally the Escoffier Skirk situation, by the way. A lot of people skipped Escoffier because she just looked like, you know, OnlyFans Gordon Ramsay. And then they were just like, oh shit, wait, she's literally almost close to, if not mandatory for Skirk.
since you never know when a character will get a rerun, the pressure to get it right the first time is immense. This strategic anxiety is not an accident either. It is a direct consequence of an evolution in design, in how both characters and the challenges they face are being created. And when people talk about this, the term that always comes up is power creep. Usually that just means new characters are released who are way stronger than the old ones. But what is happening in Genshin is far more sophisticated. The developers are careful to avoid making old characters completely obsolete. You can still clear most content with day 1 units. On the surface, it looks fine. Dig a little deeper though, and the power ceiling, the maximum possible damage a team can do, has been steadily rising. Some community data suggests that even once meta-defining characters like Raiden Shogun or Hu Tao have now fallen below average compared to the peak potential of the newest teams. And so if older characters aren't being made weaker, how is this happening? Through some
I think Glaive isn't diving into the whole day 1 characters clearing argument that much. You gotta take a look at the investment and the gameplay that people using day 1 units are using. They're also using artifacts that they farmed from day 1 as well. We gotta factor that in. A lot of people like using those I win to lose clears, or like those, you know, those 4-star unit clears where the guys are literally wailing on 4-star units. And by wailing on 4-star units, I mean they're going in, they're max refreshing every single day for months, if not years, to grind the best possible artifacts for their 4-star units. And if somebody's going ahead and max refreshing every day to be able to get their 4-star units to clear with god roll artifacts on every single slot, that's not even slightly close to relatable and shouldn't really be used as like sort of like that's an outlier being used as like the means, right? So I would dare say it's like that. If that's the kind of like video that Glaive is referring to over here, I would just politely disagree that day 1 units are easily clearing, because, well, they can if you're on that account with 400 retries, but then that's not really easy anymore, is it?
Something we can call environmental power creep. Instead of nerfing your old characters, you create new enemies and new challenges that your old characters are not built to solve. It is like having a perfectly good screwdriver, but when the game starts introducing nothing but nails, your screwdriver isn't a bad tool. It is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think this environmental power creep thing is entirely 1,000,000% real, though.
Just the wrong tool for the jobs that you're being asked to do now. And I'ma give it to Hoyoverse. This strategy is clever. It makes older characters feel inefficient without making them unusable.
So you know how fire in Genshin is supposed to be really good against ice? You guys know how fire is supposed to be really good against ice in Genshin, right? Like, you're supposed to, like, break ice elemental shields incredibly fast if you have a pyro DPS. I've got just the video for you. This is what it looks like trying to deal with this ice shield using a pyro character. I think I already broke it in that first clip. This is what it looks like trying to deal with it. Alright, here we go, priestess. Just get ready for this. This is gonna be amazing.
Solidify.
Yeah, this ice shield.
No, my soul. Let me weave you a
This ice shield with a pyro character is one of the worst things you can possibly deal with in the game. Brother. Clearly, this is not designed. This is designed to make Hu Tao feel like shit. This boss was exclusively designed to make Hu Tao feel like trash. Like garbage. And for Mavuika to come in, do her spin cycle motorcycle move, and just take them all out immediately. Yes, it's fair to say that maybe like Arlecchino or whoever's damage is higher than Hu Tao's, but not to like a degree where it's like game-breaking. But this is game-breaking, where I have 2 DPSs of the Pyro element, and one of them feels like literal shit because of this completely brain-dead, dumbass mechanic. And so I'm incentivized to pull for Mavuika, because guess what? This is, I'm pretty sure she re-ran during this fucking abyss. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty sure she did. I'm not super sure, but it would make a lot of sense if she did. And that's what I mean by, it's just, some characters literally are just, like, not playable in matchups where they should be really, really, really good. And it's astounding that the devs are like, you have to realize that these devs are putting in so much of their work, their R&D time, into specifically designing enemies in a way to make them feel like shit for their existing cast. I have no doubt in my mind that they're intentionally playtesting with their older units to make sure that they feel legitimately awful to use in their newer content. And then make it so that the new content is a complete absolute breeze with the newer units. Like, otherwise, it's almost inexplicable to me, the ridiculous moveset on this, or the ridiculous difference in quality in tackling this type of content. And they had never done it before in the game to this high of a degree.
So right on cue, a new character is released who is the perfect tool for the job. We see this with the Stygian Onslaught boss, the Overseer Automaton, whose mechanics feel so specifically designed for the new Cryo DPS Skirk, and her support is scuffier that it feels like a showcase, a tailor-made problem with a tailor-made solution.
I've shown you all exactly what this looks like. I need to show you guys this. It's fucking hilarious. We have like footage of Skirk against the automaton. Basically, if you use her, it doesn't do anything. Look at what this boss does when you have Skirk when you have Skirk. Bro just sits there. He just sits there and becomes a punching bag. He literally does not do anything.
A little of this. Let my name echo in song.
If you pull 2 limited characters that we want you to use against this boss, the boss will just sit there and not do anything for the entire fight. Yeah, so that's what's happening. And if you don't, by the way, the boss will be invulnerable. This boss literally has like 80% damage resistance and permanently shoots out lasers if you don't do this mechanic. And if you do the mechanic, the boss is a punching bag that literally doesn't do anything. So it's either, if you don't have a Scoffier and a Cryo DPS, you like just cannot do this. You just cannot do this content. And that sort of design that they're putting into the game willingly is insane.
This approach is reinforced by a clear shift in support characters. In the past, we got universal supports like Kazuha or Nahida. Their value is that they make almost any team you put them on better. They lift your whole account. From a business perspective, that is a one-time sale. The new model is tailored supports. Tailored supports is like Shenhe for Cryo or Goro for Geo. And this is just an example. I know they're not new. They provide massive bonuses, but only to a very specific narrow niche. And that was a niche, but now it's more like a character. Characters like Escoffier, who is designed almost exclusively to enable the Cryo DPS Skirk. If you
Escoffier isn't designed for Skirk. Escoffier is designed to make Freeze playable again. Because prior to Escoffier, Freeze was without a doubt the worst archetype in the game because they decided to make every single boss immune to Freeze. So using a freeze team is effectively akin to not having an elemental reaction. And when reactions are like the #1 way to deal damage in the game, they just released this unit where if you're using a freeze team, you just have minus 55% resistance on the boss for both Hydro and Cryo. So it's not her being designed for Skirk, it's her being designed to rework the freeze reaction, but you've got to pay 180 pulls for her. Up to.
Think about it, this is a much more sustainable way to sell power. It allows for incredibly new strong units without breaking the game's overall balance, because a new support for Geo doesn't make your Pyro teams any stronger. From a design standpoint, this is a brilliant way to manage the game's health long term. It allows the developers to introduce exciting levels of power and sell new desirable characters without causing the kind of runaway, account-wide power creep that can ruin the game. Power is delivered in a controlled, isolated injections rather than a single massive dose. It also effectively encourages players to become mains of a certain element, creating separate, reoccurring reasons to pull. And before you misunderstand, by the way, calling this system brilliant or sustainable isn't to say it is a good thing for the player experience. It is an observation from a design perspective. It is like an analyst observing a predator's hunting strategy and calling it effective and perfectly adapted. That doesn't mean it is a good thing for the prey. Doesn't mean it's good for the players. The very same design that is so effective for the business is what directly increases the pressure and the cost for the player.
I mean, he's not wrong. It is a pretty intelligent move from a monetization perspective, because they've already seen it work out excessively well in Honkai Star Rail. You guys remember Topaz? Is that not the most dog shit unit in the game without other follow-up attackers? Is Topaz not the most worthless piece of shit on the roster if you have no other follow-up attackers on your team? That's pretty much a fact, right? From anyone that's played Honkai Star Rail. Topaz is garbage without other follow-up attackers. Back in 2024, they used to say Topaz aged like fine wine. Nah, they just intentionally designed Topaz's kit to be a piece of shit unless you're playing her with other follow-up attackers. Then they started releasing the follow-up attack lineup. You got your Adventurine, your Robin, as well as your Fei Zhao. And of course, right, any of those characters in a vacuum, they're all pretty dog shit, except for Robin, as well as Adventurine, right? They can do their own other stuff on the side. But characters like the Topaz and the Fei Zhao, I hope you have the follow-up support ready. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a bit of a situation, aren't you, bucko? Then they did the same thing for Super Break. Rod May used to be the best universal support. Then they released all the other universal supports and they're just way better, right? Then Rod May comes in and she becomes the Super Break support. Great. Now you got to pull the Fug You. Then you got to get the Firefly, as well as, or maybe the Rappa. And guess what, guys? If you're pulling Firefly or Rappa, you are never using them outside of a Super Break team, ever. Rod May is being glued to either of those units. You're never going to go ahead and probably use Firefly or Rod May on any other teams. Maybe Rod May, right, if she's supporting something else on the side. But why would you do that when all of Rod May's non-Super Break teams got power crept and they're not able to deal the damage to deal with the content? It's just you create these giga specialized lineups, right, that require the higher level DPS to be able to clear. And so you highly incentivize fully building out these teams. And this is the thing. It's not as bad when that happens in a game like ZZZ or Wuthering Waves, because you only got 3 units max on the team. People like to use an example of maybe Kartithia and Chakota. Guys, that's literally 2 characters and then Arrow Rover getting thrown in. In ZZZ, can't be that bad either because it's 3 units. In HSR and Genshin, when it's 4 unit teams, the amount of pulls getting required to really start getting the most out of these lineups starts becoming insane. It starts becoming nuts. And at the very least, right, the one thing that I can say feels not as shit, the best Zani team in the game, right, is Zani, Phoebe, Spectral Rover. The best Kartithia team in the game is Kartithia, Arrow Rover, Chakona. At least Rover is the best sustained in both of those teams, right? And for those ones with the most specified elemental debuff, attribute debuff reactions, at least one of those members is free. And that's in 2 of the teams.
A strategic trade-off, and this perfect self-contained loop is reinforced by systems that go far beyond combat. These are the systems that seem intentionally designed to create friction, and the most obvious example is the 4-star gacha. The 4 stars are supposed to be the common backbone of your teams, but getting a specific one has become a serious challenge due to roster dilution. There are so many now that your chances of getting the one you need are incredibly small. The character Kave, for example, went over 16 banners without being featured. This becomes a real problem when a new 5-star relies on a specific 4-star C6. Their final constellation.
Yeah, like all the teams that require, like Ito requiring Goro C6, like Farazan, or sorry, Wanderer and Zhao requiring Farazan C6, like any Overload team requiring Chevreuse C6, Yansan C6 as well for the Varisa team.
To be truly effective. The situation is what many call the 4-star trap, a high-risk chase for a common character with no guarantee of success. And
the reason why I have a C1 Nahida is because Farazan was on banner, and I had her C5. Yep, that's why we have a C1 Nahida now. Or back then, that's why we got one.
now, well, the common response is, well, you can just buy them from the Star Glitter shop. And that is true, but calling it a solution is generous, my guy. A core character, like for example, Xiangling, only appears there twice a year. Waiting 6 months for a single copy is hardly a reliable alternative. This philosophy of creating friction is now expanding to the open world. Regional mechanics have evolved. Fontaine's system was a bonus. You can mostly ignore it. Natlan's Night Soul system, however, feels like a penalty. New enemies are frustrating to fight if you don't have any new Natlan character. The effect is that basic comfort is now tied to the current banner, creating soft pressure to pull just to make your everyday experience less annoying. This is
Fontaine's exploration power creep was you being able to skip picking up like a power-up that's about 1 foot away from the puzzle. But the funny thing is that you had a 50-50 chance of your Fontaine character not fitting the color of the power-up. So they had to just pick it up manually anyways. I don't think there was a single person who was even trying to factor in like Pneumonia and Oisa into like their exploration, at all. Because it was like, I don't think anyone even remembers what the colors are. I know there's like a purple one and a light yellow one. I don't know which one is Pneumonia. I don't know which one is Uisa because it just didn't matter. Yeah, one of those purple, the other's yellow. I don't know which one is which because it was that irrelevant to the gameplay.
escalation hasn't gone unnoticed either. Many players now see a clear trajectory, from Fontaine's optional convenience to Natlan's gameplay advantages to a potential future in Not Cry with character-exclusive reactions, and an unknown level of restriction in Snezhnaya. To see where this trajectory is already taking us, we only need to look at the game's newest permanent mode, and that mode is Stygian Onslaught. It is the perfect case study for where the game is today, because it is where all of these design ideas converge. Stygian Onslaught is more than a single challenge. It is a stratified endgame. It is deliberately layered into different tiers, each designed for a different level of player investment. Fearless.
This already looks like you cannot break this guy's shield unless you use Electro Charge.
Designed for
Lunar Charge. That's what this looks like right now. It looks like bro's just gonna be invulnerable unless you have Lunar Charge. Is that true? That's just how it is, isn't it?
Different level of player investment. Fearless difficulty is the proving ground for dedicated free-to-play players with meta accounts. Dire difficulty is widely considered content for high spenders, and this structure is reinforced by a simple rule. The most sought-after rewards from the highest tiers are locked behind solo-only clears. It is a pure test of your account. But the most strategic part of this design is the reward structure. The highest difficulties don't give you primo gems. Instead, they offer something specifically for veteran players, the Dust of Enlightenment. This item lets you reroll the stats on a fully leveled artifact, directly targeting the single biggest pain point in the endgame, the random and frustrating artifact grind. It is a small solution to the problem of bad luck.
I think the frustrating part is that you can oftentimes feel like the re-rolling or your lack of good artifacts is the reason why you can't clear and unlock the thing that would help you clear. It's like training for a marathon. And then once you're able to complete a full marathon, the reward that they give you is like a subscription or like an Ozempic subscription. Chances are, if you've already done the work to be able to run a full marathon, you probably don't need a weight loss supplement. But that's how the reward system for this works. You just cleared the most absurdly overtuned content in the game that required you to have ridiculous fucking artifacts to clear, and the reward is they give you a route to get better artifacts. Kind of like at like a sense level that's like a little off, isn't it?
Again, the result is a catch-22. To get the rare item that helps you fix your character's imperfect builds, you first need characters that are already so perfectly built they can clear the content in the first place, because these top-tier rewards aren't as
not pre-watched.
essential currency, the community often describe these difficulties as bait. It is bait for your sense of accomplishment, a challenge designed to make you feel your roster isn't quite strong enough. It incentivizes you to beat the game, even when the prize is just a tool for hyper optimization, not for any core progression. This entire system is a perfect microcosm of the game's mature design philosophy. And so when we look at that philosophy on a grand scale, what is the final picture? It shows that the issues we have talked about, the scarcity, the team packages, the environmental challenges, and the friction, are not isolated problems. They are interconnected pieces of a single deliberate strategy for a live service game in its mature phase.
And that's the keyword over here, mature phase. I think that Honkai Star Rail matured a lot faster than Genshin Impact. I think that Honkai Star Rail actually hit a sort of like peak player count at a certain point over in like 2.x. Then it started sort of like going down. And I think Hoyoverse recognized, okay, this is the most that we're ever gonna get. Let's start milking. And it's pretty clear during the introduction of Firefly and all of that, that's when the milking started happening. Because that's when the super tailored teams and all of that shit started coming out. And then Genshin, I do believe that this is what basically happened. I think that Genshin expected Natlan to do a lot better, but then Natlan flopped. My genuine concern is that if Natlan had actually monetarily done better and was more well received, maybe Mavuika and Sitlali's kits wouldn't have been so crazy. But I believe that the second that Hoyoverse recognizes the game has like hit its peak player base, they'll enter Milker mode. And once they're in Milker mode, you'll get stuff like these highly customized teams, absurd double banners like Mavuika Sitlali, all of that, and then try to extract as much value out of you as a player until you leave when it gets too much. And that exodus has happened in HSR, and clearly it's going to happen in Genshin as well. So yeah, once Milker mode begins, Milker mode doesn't stop. Milker mode goes until EOS. Because once again, right, they've already captured the player base. They've sealed it off. They're not really interested in getting new players. And they're just trying to extract as much cash out of you on your way out as possible.
That maturity has come a shift in purpose. The design is no longer just about creating a broadly accessible open world to draw in new players. It is now also about building sustainable long-term and monetizable engagement loops for its most dedicated players. The goal is to keep the veterans on the treadmill, perpetually chasing that next degree of optimization. As a result, the very definition of free-to-play friendly has fractured. It is no longer a simple yes or no question, because for the casual players focused on story and exploration, Genshin Impact remains one of the best and most generous games on the market, I think. Exceptionally friendly. However,
I agree with him. If you treat Genshin like a story-based game and do not even think about like the end game content, the side activities, that sort of stuff, I think it's actually going to be great for you. But the more you get invested in the game, the deeper you get into this game's meta, and the more you try to like actually complete the end game, think of 100%ing this game. Think of beating this game as beating its story. Because if you go ahead and consider playing the end game, doing all of this, building good teams as your end game, you're going to be in for one of the worst, most expensive rides of your fucking life. And it's the same for HSR. And a big concern is that ZZZ is going to be in the same exact spot as well. That's why I talk so much about the end game in that game. Because HSR and Genshin, if you're a free-to-play player, has effectively become, they both become story-based games. And that's it. That's as far as it goes for free-to-plays.
However, for the player aiming to engage with the endgame at a high level,
and the worst part about this is that point at the start of the video, right? Free-to-plays are able to get so much more than they used to. That's like the honeymoon period that he talked about, right? That's the bait. That's the hook. You're able to build all these teams, but to maintain those teams, especially with the rampant pace of power creep, that will be impossible within 6 months from now.
the reality is different. The demands for strategic planning, for strict resource discipline, and for long-term commitment are now higher than they have ever been. The path forward then is one of adaptation. It requires a clear-eyed assessment of what we truly want from the game and how we choose to align our time and resources to that goal. So the question I will leave you with is this: as players, how do we adjust our own approach to navigate this increasingly complex and demanding ecosystem? And I know you're gonna say just quit the game, but I think I want a more nuanced discussion. Let me know.
All right, awesome video by Glaive. Clearly, it's a very sensitive topical area for a lot of gacha game players because Genshin is going to be, or is, the biggest video, or sorry, the biggest gacha game in the space. And a lot of people take inspiration from what Genshin does and implements it in their games. And the one thing that I genuinely hope does not happen for all of these gacha games is that they take inspiration from the milker mode that Genshin is currently in right now, because it's so apparent. You don't, like, it's so clear. I think the entire player base just accepts it. That's what's going on. It's in its HSR phase, and those two games, they're so damn expensive, it's ridiculous. So yeah, that'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you give Glaive a like and a follow. Oh, I'll do that as well. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.